It's 1973 on a university campus in Nashville, Tennessee. 120 people are gathering for a family reunion. They share a name that, for a century, meant money itself, the way we say Rockefeller or Musk today. The name is Vanderbilt. 96 years earlier, the man who founded this family died with a fortune larger than the United States Treasury. Not the richest man in America, richer than America's bank account. His descendants built the biggest houses this country has ever seen. They married into royalty. They were royalty. And at that reunion in 1973, 120 descendants in one room, there was not one millionaire among them. No crash, no scandal, no thief in the night. So where did the greatest fortune in American history actually go? The answer starts with a 16-year-old and a $100 boat. Staten Island, New York, 1805 or so. A boy named Cornelius Vanderbilt is 11 years old, the fourth of 9 children in a family with nothing to spare. That's the year he quits school. Forever. He goes to work on his father's ferry in New York Harbor. At 16, he wants his own boat, and as the story goes, his mother lends him $100 to buy one, a little 2-masted sailing vessel he names the Swiftsure. Hold that number, $100. It's the seed of everything that follows. Young Vanderbilt ferries freight and passengers between Staten Island and Manhattan. Harder, longer, and cheaper than anyone else on the water. He is rough, profane, barely literate, and completely unbeatable. Then, in 1817, comes the leap. A businessman named Thomas Gibbons hires him to captain a steamboat, in open defiance of a New York law that had handed a total monopoly on steam travel to one politically connected family. Vanderbilt runs the blockade for years, dodging sheriffs, undercutting fares, while the case climbs to the Supreme Court. And in 1824, the court rules no state can wall off interstate commerce. The monopoly dies. The water is free. And no man alive is better positioned to profit from free water than Cornelius Vanderbilt. Steamboat lines, ocean routes. Then, in his 60s, when most men of his era were finished, he pivots the entire fortune into the technology eating the country: railroads. He assembles the New York Central, the artery between New York and the West. They call him the Commodore. And here's the detail that tells you who he was. Through all of it, he lives in a modest house, wears the same style of black frock coat, and sneers at luxury. The money isn't for spending. The money is the scoreboard. Cornelius Vanderbilt dies on January 4, 1877, at 82. His fortune? Roughly $100 million. To grasp what that meant, his estate was worth more than the entire United States Treasury held at the time. One man. More liquid wealth than the federal government of the United States. $100 in, a treasury-beating fortune out. It is, and may still be, the greatest rags-to-riches run in American history. And on his deathbed, the Commodore made a decision about that fortune, one that history would prove right exactly once. The Commodore had 13 children. He left almost everything to one, his eldest son, William Henry, Billy. The logic was brutal and simple. Split a fortune and you scatter it, concentrated in the hands of the one son who understands the machine, and it lives. Billy was mocked all his life as the dull one, the plodding farm manager son of a lion. Then he took over the railroads and did something the whole Gilded Age was watching for. He ran them better. In under 9 years, William Henry Vanderbilt doubles the largest fortune in America, around $200 million by 1885. The richest man on earth. The Commodore's bet, one heir, one steward, worked perfectly. Billy is also remembered for 4 ugly words. "The public be damned," snapped at a reporter in 1883. Worth knowing, the printed version of that interview was heavily reworked by the press. What he actually argued was that railroads had to pay their way. The misquote stuck for a reason, though. It's how America was starting to feel about the Vanderbilts. Because while Billy was quietly doubling the money, the rest of the family had discovered what money was for. And in the spring of 1883, one party announced the new era to the world. March 26, 1883, Alva Vanderbilt, Billy's daughter-in-law, a woman of granite will, throws a costume ball at the family's new Fifth Avenue chateau. The cost? Roughly $250,000 in 1883. That's over $7 million today. $65,000 on champagne, $156,000 on costumes. And here's what that $250,000 was actually buying. New York society was ruled by Mrs. Astor and her list of the 400, old money only. The Vanderbilts, for all their railroads, were new money, excluded. The ball was a siege weapon, and it worked. Mrs. Astor herself came. The Vanderbilts were finally in. Stop on that for a second. The family had crossed a line almost nobody noticed. For the Commodore, money was the scoreboard of work. For the new generation, money was the entry fee for status. Scoreboards grow. Entry fees only get steeper. On December 8, 1885, not 9 years after his father, William Henry Vanderbilt dies. And with him dies something the family never gets back. Here is the single most important sentence in this story, and it comes straight from the record. He was the only heir who ever increased the Vanderbilt fortune. The only one. Ever. From that day forward, across 130 years and hundreds of descendants, every year is subtraction. Subtraction, at first, looks glorious. The third generation inherits the pile in 1885, and the pile starts to perform. Billy's eldest son builds the largest private home New York City has ever seen, roughly 154 rooms on West 57th Street. His brothers and cousins line Fifth Avenue with limestone chateaus, 10 great Vanderbilt mansions on one street, and fill Newport with marble summer cottages used 6 weeks a year. And the youngest brother, George, a quiet man who never worked in the railroads at all, goes furthest. In the mountains of North Carolina, he builds Biltmore, 250 rooms, 175,000 square feet, on 125,000 acres. It opens on Christmas Eve 1895, the largest house in the United States. It still is. $5 million, nearly $200 million today, for a house. Built by a man in his 20s who had never earned a dollar of the money. None of them had. That's the thing about the third generation. They were raised inside the fortune. To them, it wasn't a machine that ran on work. It was weather. It was simply there. But the purest window into what the fortune had become isn't a building. It's a wedding. November 6, 1895, St. Thomas Church, Manhattan. 18-year-old Consuelo Vanderbilt, Alva's only daughter, is standing at the altar beside the Duke of Marlborough. Witnesses would remember one detail. The bride was weeping behind her veil. Consuelo loved someone else. She'd planned to elope. Her mother locked her in her room. Alva's philosophy, in her own words, "I do the thinking, you do as you are told." The Duke, for his part, needed money to save his crumbling ancestral palace. He collected $2.5 million in railroad stock, call it $90 million today, and told Consuelo on their honeymoon exactly why he'd married her. An American girl, traded for a title at a posted price. That's what the scoreboard had turned into, 10 years after the last Vanderbilt who ever added to it was gone. The Commodore bought railroads. His grandchildren bought a Duke. The marriage failed, as bought things do. Separation, divorce, and finally an annulment where Alva herself testified, to her credit, that she had forced her daughter to the altar. Alva spent her later years fighting for women's right to vote. People are complicated. Fortunes, it turns out, are simpler. They follow arithmetic. So let's do the arithmetic, because the fall of the Vanderbilts isn't a mystery. It's a math problem with 4 lines. Line 1. Division. The Commodore concentrated the fortune in one heir. Billy split it among many. Every generation after split it again. Dozens of heirs, then hundreds. 100 million divided enough times is a set of comfortable allowances. Not an empire. Line 2. Spending. The palaces, the yachts, the balls, the dowries. Each one turned earning assets, railroad shares, into costing assets. Marble that had to be heated, staffed, and repaired. The fortune wasn't just shrinking, it was being converted, mansion by mansion, into things that ate money. Line 3. Taxes. In 1913, America introduces the income tax. The estate tax follows. The frictionless world the fortune was built in, gone. George Vanderbilt felt it immediately. Pressed by the new income tax and Biltmore's crushing upkeep, he began selling off 87,000 acres to the federal government. The palaces started paying for themselves the only way they could, by being dismantled. And line 4, the one nobody inside the family wanted to see. The engine died. The whole fortune stood on railroads, and the 20th century took the railroads apart. Cars, trucks, highways, airlines. The mighty New York Central bled for decades, merged in desperation with its old rival, the Pennsylvania Railroad. And on June 21, 1970, the merged company, Penn Central, collapsed in what was then the largest bankruptcy in American history. The family was long since out of the business, but mark the symbolism. The machine the Commodore built to print the money ended as the biggest corporate failure the country had ever seen. Meanwhile, on Fifth Avenue, the wrecking balls had already come. One by one, all 10 of the great Vanderbilt mansions were torn down, sold off as the money thinned, flattened for office towers and department stores. New Yorkers gave the demolition era a name: the fall of the House of Vanderbilt. The grandest private street in American history, erased so completely that most people walking it today have no idea it ever existed. So, the question from that reunion in Nashville: where did the greatest fortune in American history go? Nowhere dramatic, that's the revelation. It was divided by heirs who multiplied, spent on things that consumed instead of produced, taxed by a century the family never planned for, and abandoned by the one thing that could have refilled it: work. After 1885, no Vanderbilt ever added to the pile again. The fortune didn't fail the family. The family fired the fortune's only engine, and coasted in magnificent style for 90 years, all the way to zero. 120 descendants, 96 years. Not one millionaire in the room. And yet, drive into the mountains of North Carolina today, and you'll find the great exception. Biltmore, the most extravagant folly of them all, is still owned by George Vanderbilt's descendants. Why did the biggest money pit survive when everything else fell? Because in 1930, the family did the one thing no Vanderbilt palace had ever done. They opened the doors and charged admission. The house got a job. It's been working ever since, a business welcoming millions of visitors, run by the family, paying its own way. The only asset that survived is the one that went back to work. The Commodore would have understood that perfectly. There's more of him hiding in plain sight. Grand Central Terminal. The family built it. His statue still watches the traffic on Park Avenue. Vanderbilt University, from his single $1 million gift, now worth more than the family fortune ever was. And those 87,000 sold-off Biltmore acres, they became some of the first great public forest land in the eastern United States. The scoreboard is gone. The things that served people stayed. Even the name found its way back to work. The best-known Vanderbilt descendant today is a working journalist, Gloria Vanderbilt's son, Anderson Cooper, famously raised to expect no inheritance at all. 4 generations to learn the lesson the Commodore knew at 16 on a $100 boat. Money is not weather. It's a wage for solving problems, and it stops the day you stop. The Vanderbilts weren't destroyed by an enemy. They were destroyed by the one thing the Commodore never built into the fortune: a reason to keep earning it. Next time, we return to Main Street, to a store that once outmuscled Walmart itself. Bigger, richer, first to every prize in retail. And then it lost to Walmart so completely that its name became a punchline, for reasons that had nothing to do with price. Kmart. What happened? That's next time on Boomtown, America.